So he's going to make the streets of Britain safe, but the only group of people that he refers to are Muslims.
Yeah, and one wonders if that's because Labour is running scared of losing Muslim votes, largely on account of his position on Gaza last year.
Right.
That this is the sort of the default response. One mosque was targeted, and suddenly it is mosques, plural.
Right.
But it's interesting, isn't it, that this is a sign of how the far right is showing its face, but the riots in Leeds the other week were not a sign of the Romani community showing its true face, or the South Asian community showing its face when hundreds of people turned up outside the police station in Rochdale after
demanding that 2 thugs be released.
Yeah,
right?
absolutely. Is this those communities showing their true face? I don't think it would count. But why is it, therefore, that the second that this happens, that it is just the far right and that there isn't justified anger? And we do need to be clear, there is a far right element to all of this. There were people travelling from all over the country to cause problems, but that was not, in fact, the cause of the anger. It wasn't a spontaneous far-right rally. There was something that happened in Southport, and there have been things that have been happening across the north of England and the Midlands for a very long time, be it the Manchester arena bombing, be it the grooming gang scandals, which is still ongoing and still isn't being properly addressed.
Well, there was a case only yesterday, I think, that came to court, you know, which has been mumbling on for years. And the problem is for Starmer to stand there, you know, and yes, he may have a point about wanting to make sure that we don't have a summer of riots and that we don't have, you know, law and order completely falling apart around its ears. And yes, the police have to police the streets. However, if you watch that, if you come out of a spaceship from Mars and sat down and watched that speech, you would have thought the only problem in this country is caused by far-right hooligans.
I mean,
which it isn't.
Well, was there any suggestion after the riots in Hare Hill in Leeds that there was going to be facial recognition technology deployed against those people? No, absolutely not. Yeah, and the problem with that is, of course, the police go in heavy-handed. They might discover that there are people there illegally or who might have to be deported because of the way that they've broken the law. They don't want to do that. They don't want to be seen to be, you know, kicking in people's doors. But the second that it becomes, you know, a white working class community, then all of a sudden, oh, it's reprobates and they're football hooligans. That's what it is. You know, sort of going back to the 80s, all your problems can be solved by arresting football hooligans. Yeah, and that's sort of the brush with which people are painted if it's one community over another. But I have to say, you know, this is a situation that the Labour Party and the Conservatives before them, successive governments have got themselves into. Actually, if white working class people or the far right or whoever it is see other minority communities rioting and getting away with it, they will think to themselves, that's the way that you get things done in this country.
Well, let's not forget the people who were standing up for the rights of those who wanted to march around in London, you know, decrying Jewish people, threatening Jewish people, making out that the Free Palestine marches were not actually just about freeing Palestine, but about doing away with the Israeli state. And they had the perfect right to continue to do it because, of course, you must have the right to march around and do whatever you want. But let's have a listen to the next bit of what Starmer had to say about what he wants to actually do.
Crime is crime, and so to that end, I can announce today that following this meeting, we will establish a national capability across police forces to tackle violent disorder. These thugs are mobile, they move from community to community, and we must have a policing response that can do the same. Shared intelligence, wider deployment of facial recognition technology, and preventative action, criminal behaviour orders to restrict their movements before they can even board a train, in just the same way that we do with football hooligans. And let me also say to large social media companies and those who run them, violent disorder clearly whipped up online, that is also a crime. It's happening on your premises. And the law must be upheld everywhere.
So when I heard him say all that yesterday, I thought to myself, what exactly does he mean by whipping up, you know, violence online? Because I thought to myself, the next thing that's going to happen is that, you know, basically all the crime is going to be committed by people on Twitter, all the crime is going to be committed by these people jumping on trains, apparently, en masse. You know, so God help the latest Women's Institute outing to, you know, Paddington from Dorset, you know, they suddenly get, you know, swarmed by the SWAT team. And, you know, Silky Carlo from Big Brother Watch has said, you know, this facial recognition technology they're talking about using has been banned in Europe. It's not used with any great sort of alacrity anywhere apart from in London and in South Wales. And so suddenly he's going to start, you know, spying on people basically and coming and knocking on your door, Benedict, because you didn't like something that he said.
I mean, the other thing that needs to be pointed out about a lot of this technology is it doesn't work uniformly. For some ethnic groups it does, white people. For a lot of others it doesn't.
Right.
And you actually get lots of cases of mistaken identity. So, you know, straight off the bat, that means that it's a flawed idea. But, you know, there's a lot to unpick there. So, you know, going after the social media companies, that's a favourite of politicians.
Yes.
Oh, blame everything, blame social media. It's nasty Elon Musk and Mark Zuckerberg.
And all that ever happens is
tired.
they get Mark Zuckerberg into some select committee room and give him a going over for a couple of hours, and then he goes home.
Yeah, and he goes, I sell adverts. What do you want from me?
Yes.
You know, I'm not the one posting this. But, you know, I mean, it's interesting, isn't it, hearing him also saying, crime is crime, you know, now that this has happened. You know, given that 2.5 weeks ago he was saying, this country is addicted to punishment, and we put too many people in prison, unless it's white people rioting, in which case, lock them all up. I wasn't aware that we had the prison capacity for that. But talking about mobile gangs as well, last year we had literally mobile groups of young Muslim and Hindu youths going from town to town across the Midlands and the North, again, fighting each other over a cricket match. No suggestion that they are mobile gangs, even though they fit the definition. At the same time as the Southport. Exactly. There was a literal riot with people with machetes, famously a very long-standing cultural institution in this country to hack down all the jungle that we have here. People chasing each other around with machetes in Southend. Any suggestion that they would be targeted?
And we had a call from a guy from Southend, actually, the day after that, who said, by the way, this is not unusual. This happens all the time now because you've got Albanian gangs running riot down here. There's drug gangs everywhere. At night, basically, you don't go out. Same goes for Bournemouth. Same goes for places like Hastings. You know, Britain's seaside towns are awash with crime.
And this is why, when those parents, when those members of the local community in Southport were saying, what are you going to do, Prime Minister? How many more kids? They're not talking about Muslim terrorism or anything like that, the most extreme stuff. They are literally pointing out that knife crime has become part and parcel of life in ordinary provincial towns and cities across this country. 30 years ago, when James Bulger was murdered, actually it captured the attention of the nation for weeks at a time because it was a horrifying thing for a child to be murdered. Children have been murdered again today, and we've already moved on. We're talking about instead multicultural issues.
But no, we're also
because
talking,
knife crime is normal.
No,
now.
because we're also talking about as if it's the fault of the people who are chucking bricks at the police, and it's the fault of social media companies rather than the fault of actual criminals, actual knife men and women, people who are stabbing indiscriminately children in a play centre. I mean, it's absolutely incredible.